Hello, I'm David Ringstrom, a CPA in Atlanta, and welcome to part 3 on our series with macros. This time we will continue our journey and go even deeper into creating programming code. We're going to see how to create a couple different macros from scratch. We'll also spend some time working with loops in Excel. There's a couple different ways that we can create macros that loop through various aspects of our spreadsheets, such as looping through all the sheets in a workbook and making all the sheets visible, rather than having to do that task manually, or combining data from multiple workbooks together into one big list. It's another frequently used task. We'll also see how to loop through a range of cells and do things such as color coding the cells based on the values. And so we'll be using a construct called select case as a way of making decisions within a loop there. So that's the focus of our time together with part 3 of this series here, looking to take your Visual Basic skills even further than we've gotten in parts 1 and 2. I'd like to give you some background about the version of Excel I'll be teaching from, because the way that we pay for software has evolved over the years. Historically, we bought a perpetual license for software, which meant that we would pay once for the software and then use it as far into the future as we would like. But things have evolved, and more software is being purchased or licensed on a subscription basis. And so that's why Microsoft has the Office 365 version. Historically, there hasn't been, not that Office 365 has been around that long, it's been around for a couple years now, but historically, up to this point, there hasn't been much difference between the Office 365 version and, let's say, Excel 2016 or even Excel 2019. Going forward, though, Office 365 is going to start being dramatically different than what I'm terming the legacy versions of Excel, which are any version of Excel that have a year number in their name. In Office 365, we're going to be getting a new calculation engine, which means that the way that formulas will calculate much faster, we'll be able to do dramatic new things with formulas that previously have required menu commands. And so lots of exciting changes are on the horizon for Office 365. So if you're using an older version of Excel and considering moving to a later, and more current version, rather than following your historical pattern and just getting the Excel 2019, that version of Excel honestly is already obsolete. There are changes coming to Office 365 that will not be added to Excel 2019. The legacy versions of Excel with the year number, those are frozen in time. Those aren't evolving. So the Office 365 version updates sometimes monthly, sometimes a few months go by before they add changes, but it's constantly being improved, and so that's where Microsoft is putting all their efforts. With regard to today's material, if there is anything that I cover that's specific to a version of Excel, I'll bring that to your attention. Most of what I talk about in my presentations, I try to cast a wide net and cover things that are applicable to as many versions of Excel as possible. But obviously at various points, I sometimes need to just cover something that's brand new so that everyone can take advantage of the new functionality. With regard to my training style, you'll see that I will show you everything at least twice. I'll first walk you through it on the PowerPoint slides, which are very detailed and have numbered steps. Then I'll go to the Office 365 version of Excel and carry out those techniques firsthand. The handouts for today do include a PDF of today's presentation as well as the example workbook. Also within that example workbook is a related articles tab that has links to articles I've written that relate to today's material. So I do try to leave you with a lot of takeaways from choosing one of my presentations. To begin, I want to show you, we're going to demonstrate a problem that I'll refer to as the big sheet problem. And you've likely encountered the big sheet problem where when we put some data in a spreadsheet, the scroll bars work commensurate with the last cell in the worksheet that we have placed any data within. The problem arises is when we either purposefully or accidentally end up putting some data in the outer reaches of a spreadsheet that makes the scroll bars suddenly no longer commensurate with the last cell of our spreadsheet. So what happens is when we type anything in a worksheet, even if we then press delete to erase it, that cell is then perpetually marked as dirty within our spreadsheet. So that if we use the scroll bars, we keep scrolling down to that cell that at one point had some data in it. Or if we use a keyboard shortcut such as Control-End or End-Home, that too will return us to that last used cell in our spreadsheet. So I'm going to show you a way that we can create a macro that will allow us to reset a worksheet so that we aren't plagued by this big sheet problem. We will be able to reset the last used range in our worksheets. To set things up though, in a blank worksheet, we'll type 100 in cell A10. We'll press enter. Step 2 shows we're going to press Control Home, and that will take us back to cell A1. So step 3 will then press either Control and then the End key, or tap the End key and then tap the Home key. We'll see our cursor returns to cell A10 as we would expect. If we grab the scroll bar, it's going to stop after one screen because cell A10 is the farthest away from A1 that we have edited. Next, we're going to go to a far-flung cell, such as Z500. Easy way to get there is in the name box, which appears right above column A, where we typically see the address of the cell that we're presently in. We can type Z500 there and press enter. That will then move us to column Z in row 500. So we'll type our name in that cell and press enter. We'll go back to that cell and press delete so that superficially that cell is blank again. Now make sure that you press delete rather than undo, because if you undo, then you won't be able to trigger this behavior that I'm trying to demonstrate with scroll bars. At that point, if we press Control Home and then do Control End or End Home again, they're going to keep taking us back to cell Z500 because that was the last used cell, whether or not it still has data in it or not. Here in Excel, I will go to cell A10, let's say, and type in 100. So if I then hold down the Control key, press the Home key, it takes me up to cell A1. Hold down the Control key and tap the End key will take me back to cell A10. So Control Home for cell A1, Control End for the last cell that we've used in the worksheet. Now notice Control End is not going to take us down to the millionth row and over to the 16,384th column. It takes us to the last used cell in our spreadsheet. So here in the name box, we'll type in Z500, just so that we end up a ways to the right and then further down in our spreadsheet. I'll type my name here in this cell, I'll press enter, I'll go back and change my mind, I'll press delete. So in my mind, that cell is empty and it's not been used. In Excel's mind, it's a completely different situation. So I'm going to hold down the Control key, tap the Home key. Notice now my scroll bar. So when I grab the scroll bar, it's going to scroll me all the way down to row 500, even though there's no data in row 500. And if I go back up to the top, if I hold down the Control key and tap the End key, Control End, it takes me right back to Z500. So Excel is going to latch on to that used cell until I take an action that does require a bit of programming code to reset the worksheet. So this sets up the case for what is often referred to as the big sheet problem, where the scroll bars get out of step, and so then you're suddenly not able to use your scroll bars to scroll to the bottom of the worksheet because they're skewed. In Excel, what we're going to do is we're going to press Alt F11 to launch the Visual Basic Editor. So if we have the Developer menu shown, we can also click Visual Basic from the Developer menu, but if we don't, we can always press Alt F11. Step 2, we'll go to the View menu. Step 3, we're going to choose the Immediate window. That brings up a space in Excel where we can type a line of code and press enter and execute that line of code without creating a formal macro. So I'll show you how we can use this to reset our worksheet, and then we will go through the steps of actually formalizing it and creating a macro that we can use on demand. So when we encounter worksheets where the scroll bars are out of step, we'll be able to reset the worksheet. The line of code that we'll type is ActiveSheet.UsedRange. So what ActiveSheet refers to is whatever worksheet we're presently on. Used range refers to the used area of the spreadsheet. And so by running this line of code here, that makes Excel reassess what truly is the used range, so that causes it to disregard any cells that have been marked as dirty and actually go back and look at the cells that actually have data in them and reset that used range, which in turn fixes our scroll bars. So when you type ActiveSheet.UsedRange and press enter, you should not get any feedback. If you get a prompt or anything, that means you didn't type it correctly. You don't have to worry about capitalizing. You can type it all lowercase if you wish, or you can capitalize it or type it all uppercase. If we then go to the File menu, that's step 5 in the Visual Basic Editor. Step 6 will say close and return to Microsoft Excel. At that point, we can press Control Home to return to cell A1. If we then either use End Home or Control End, either one of those will take us to cell A10. We'll have then reset our worksheet.